Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gaming Medley here, and today we have some interesting news. As of 6:02 a.m. today, October 1st, 2015, Deus Ex has tweeted that their tier-based pre-order system for Deus Ex Mankind Divided has been cancelled. Now, for those of you who don't know what the big deal around this tier-based pre-ordering system was, I have a video I did on it that I will link in the description. But because you probably don't want to watch a 34-minute video of me ranting about horrible DLC anti-consumer practices done by companies, I will just give you a quick overview of what was entailed. So the DLC program was to augment your pre-order, quote, and gave you essentially various things based on how many people pre-ordered the game along with you. So upon pre-ordering the game, everybody automatically got access to Tier 1, which was essentially a set of skins for the main character and weapons that related to the playstyle those skins represented. Tier 2 was either a digital art book or digital OST sampler. Tier 3 was an extra in-game mission. Tier 4 was a digital comic book or a digital novella. And Tier 5 was an early release of the game, meaning the game would be released 4 days early for everybody who had pre-ordered the game if enough people pre-ordered the game to get the pre-order to Tier 5. So essentially, you would pre-order the game, a bunch of other people would hopefully pre-order the game, and then depending on how many people pre-ordered the game, more and more tiers of rewards would be unlocked. Of course, people had a giant shitfest about this, including me, because this is by far one of the worst anti-consumer pre-orders that I have ever seen. At least with Evolve and shit, it mostly just gave you cosmetic stuff. The things in this pre-order are things that actually affect the game and the people playing the game, like the different types of armors and weapons that would be offered for pre-ordering. The extra in-game mission is probably one of the most significant things, and the 4-day early release is definitely hugely significant for a lot of people. The digital comic book, digital novella, digital art book, and digital OST sampler, could go either way on those. But since this has been cancelled, many of you are probably wondering, so what do we get if we pre-order the game? If I pre-ordered the game, am I just not getting anything now? You are getting everything except for the early release. The game will now release on February 23rd, 2016 for absolutely everyone. You will get everything else that was originally in the Augment Your Pre-order system as a reward for pre-ordering the game now. So people who pre-ordered the game still get all of that stuff. This makes a lot of sense because obviously they had already developed all of that stuff. There have been some people saying like, well, they probably only had developed like 3 tiers of it and they were going to develop the other tiers if enough people bought it. That's absolutely idiotic. No, they had already developed all of this stuff doubtlessly, and it would just make absolutely no sense for all of it to go to waste. So you'll get everything except the early release. That's really good, and it's also really bad. This is still a pre-order that adds a lot of stuff to the game. I would still advocate not pre-ordering this game until you know how the game actually fucking plays, just like any smart consumer would. There's still no evidence that this game will be good. Pretty much every other Deus Ex game so far has been a pile of shit, and the ones in between have been pretty good. Original Deus Ex was great, Deus Ex Human Revolution was pretty good, Deus Ex Mankind Divided looks like it's going to be really good. But there's no proof yet, so don't pre-order this game. Just because they backed off a bit and said that it wasn't this horrific tier-based system anymore doesn't mean that you should actually just go out and be like, well, I guess they apologized, so it's okay for me to get this, right? No, it's probably not. You should probably use your head and realize that you have absolutely no way of knowing that this game will actually be good, and therefore not pre-order the game until you know that it is good. Now, Square Enix and developer Eidos Montreal released a joint statement about this saying, quote, "When the system was first conceived, we wanted the program to give you more choice about what you received in terms of pre-order incentives." They then went on to say that they felt dissatisfied with region-specific pre-order rewards. Obviously, the solution to that is just offering one base worldwide pre-order reward and not throwing up some bullshit in the air about how you use this tier-based system as a consumer positive system to somehow circumvent the tyranny of regional specific pre-order rewards, because that's utter bullshit. And obviously, any good intentions were muffled, to say the least. I felt bad for the actual developer of the game because their studio head, David Anafossi of Eidos Montreal, said, quote, "We really understand and appreciate the passion for Deus Ex that the fans have shown here. Know that all of us, both at Square Enix and Eidos Montreal, shared that passion for this franchise." I just felt bad for him because Eidos Montreal in all likelihood had nothing to do with this pre-order system. It should be obvious to consumers now that pre-orders that come out or pre-order bonuses for games are determined entirely by the publisher because they want to make more money and milk people for cash, and they typically aren't determined by the developer because most devs want people to play all of their game and get the best experience possible from their game, and that happens to directly conflict with the idea of milking people out of certain parts of the game unless they pay more for it. Something that is interesting to note is that the $139.99 collector's edition of the game still includes all of the stuff from the augmentation pre-order and all the physical stuff that they offered with it. The reason this is interesting is because now if you pre-order the digital version of the game, you get all the stuff promised throughout the tiers of the pre-order, but you get it in digital form, and it's kind of funny to me that you can pay over twice as much just to get a physical version of some things. I think that's a little ridiculous, but regardless, at least it's good that this was taken out. Now, what's been most surprising to me is that there have actually been a lot of people who have been trying to justify this tier-based pre-order system by saying that, well, Kickstarter does it, so why isn't it okay if Deus Ex does it? I think that this should be fairly clear and that anybody who has half a brain to think with should know why it's okay for Kickstarter to offer those incentives and not okay for Deus Ex Mankind Divided to offer those kind of incentives or bonuses to pre-ordering the game. Because with Kickstarter, the assumption is the people who you are kickstarting do not have money to develop the project. Those extra incentives are things that they need to get people to donate money to a project which would otherwise have no chance of being funded. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is being published by Square Enix and is one of the most anticipated games of 2016, and it has had an immense amount of funding. No fundraising needed to be had for this game. The only reason this augment your own pre-order system existed was to bolster day one sales. It's an extremely idiotic comparison in my opinion, because correlation does not equal causation. It's one of the founding principles of psychology and it's something that everybody should be familiar with, but just because Kickstarter does something doesn't mean that big AAA developers and publishers are allowed to do the same shit. They're two entirely different animals and they have entirely different ways of fundraising and doing things like this. So that's dumb. Anyways, net result is pretty good for the consumer. Granted, this pre-order is still pretty shit because it gives you a lot of stuff that a lot of people will want to have and a lot of people will be enticed to pre-order the game just because it still gives you all the shit that was in the tier-based pre-order. It just gives you all of it without it being locked behind tiers, obviously with the exception of the 4-day early release. So I'm still weary of this pre-order because I think a lot of people will still pre-order it just because there's stuff in there that they want to have, regardless of how anti-consumer it ultimately is and regardless of the fact that it just encourages and perpetrates this culture of publishers of games releasing exclusive content to people who will pay for their game before they actually know if it's good. But it's certainly better than the tier-based pre-ordering system that the game exhibited before this point, and it is a net win for consumers in showing that if you speak out against the system or the man, your voice actually is heard to a certain extent, and it actually can, in fact, affect what happens and what the bigwigs or the men in power do. Note, when I say the men, it's just because I'm referring to the ubiquitous term the man to refer to people in power. I know that there are several wonderful ladies who are in power as well. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for today on this issue for me. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the fact they canceled it. I'm not happy that the pre-order still gives you so much shit, but considering they had already probably developed all of it, what can you do? Overall, a net win, and I'm happy that this battle was won. Feel free to like, dislike if you hated this video and hate my voice, which most of you probably do. Comment, share, favorite, subscribe, or whatever you think this video deserves. I look forward to seeing you all next time. GM out.